Greetings and welcome back as we continue the epic journey of building our twin stick shooter prototype. Now obviously we have done a lot up to this point, right? We've got our hero, he can move around the world, he can shoot. As a matter of fact, let's just hit play. We can kind of show off what we've done so far. So we can move in all different directions. Of course, I'm using my controller. You could be using the keyboard right now if you wanted to. We have a weapon that we can shoot. It fires projectiles. Those projectiles can damage and eventually destroy enemies. The enemies will keep spawning into the world and keep hunting us down. They can damage us, and if they kill us, we respawn. So you could argue that at this point, we have a fully playable game prototype. If you were just testing out the concept of whether this game could work, you're good. As a matter of fact, if you had other people on your team who needed to start designing levels, they could take what you have right now and start constructing those levels, which is pretty cool. However, we now need to start making the game look a little bit nicer. Now, I'll give you just a quick heads up. When we finish this video series, there is still going to be a lot left that you could do to this game. This is still, at the end of the day, a prototype, but it's going to be a very pretty prototype, mostly because of the assets we're using. The first thing I want to do is get our hero character animated. Now, animation is a very, very deep topic, especially for games, any gaming environment, and that includes Unreal Engine 4. There are a lot of things you can do with the animation system. I mean, if you have a really complicated character who needs to be able to, walk, run, crawl, jump, sneak, dive, roll, maybe have different walk and run cycles based on what he's carrying or how much he's been wounded, or whether somebody, maybe he's been spotted, so now he has to have totally different behavior. There are a lot of different, very deep things you can do within animation in Unreal Engine 4. What we're going to do is very, very simple, but we're going to kind of take our time and show you the process as we go. What I'd like you to do first is go under the Animation Assets folder. And what you have here is a series of animations. And at a glance, we have 3 death animations. We have an idle and a walk animation for the enemy. I will mention this, and I'll probably end up mentioning again. The walk cycle has a little bit of a pop to it. We know that. It's just because this is the animation that we had. Don't worry about it again. It's for prototyping. It should be okay. And then we have some running animations for our characters. So the character is going to have the ability to run around, the enemy has the ability to walk, and then they're both going to have the ability to die. So now the next thing we need is to create some assets that will bring these animations together and help us easily blend between them. Because right now we've got the ability for our hero character, if I open this up, which, by the way, when you double click any of these animation assets, you are opening them up inside Persona. Persona is the animation editor for Unreal Engine 4, and we'll talk a little bit more about it here in just a second. But if we take a look, so I've got the ability to run forward, and let's kind of pan around to like a 3/4 view. We can run backward, we can run left, and we can run right. But what we want is the ability to blend all of these together. So that's what we're going to be building first. Now, kind of a quick aside, let's take a quick look at Persona. So it is its own editor. It's all about handling animation. And first and foremost, you should be aware of the modes that it has. So there's 3 modes visible up here in the upper right-hand corner. We have skeleton mode, where you can take a look at the skeleton for a character. So if you click on any one of these bones, you can see all of the child bones highlighted in its hierarchy. So for example, if I grab, say, the left clavicle, suddenly we're looking at only the bones that run down the left arm. If I grab the root, we can see all the bones, which is pretty nifty. Next, we have the mesh mode. Now this is specifically about handling the mesh itself. So notable properties would be things like the materials that are applied, or if there's any sort of physics calculations running off the mesh. Then we have the animation tab, and the animation tab is where you control all of the different animation assets that are associated with this character, or with the skeleton specifically. So the skeleton asset, which I'll take just a moment to talk about that, the skeleton asset is actually kind of the linchpin asset. It is the asset that kind of brings together the entire animation system in Unreal Engine 4. If you open up the UE4 mannequin folder, and you open up the mesh, here you'll find the UE4 mannequin skeleton asset. If you double click it, it's just going to open up Persona and take you right to the skeleton tab. So it doesn't really give you a clear idea of what the skeleton is for, and that's because the skeleton asset does a lot of things under the hood. So it's essentially a list of all of the bones in your hierarchy, very much like this list here, but it keeps track of the bone relationships so that you can have different characters that share the same skeleton asset. And whenever two characters share the same skeleton asset, they can in turn share animation, which is a very handy way to reuse animations over and over again. Now, there are a lot more things that the skeleton does. I could go on and on and on, but for now, for this example, we're going to keep things very simple, primarily because we really only have one skeleton that we're using in this whole game. So let's jump back out. Let's go back into our animation assets folder, and we're going to build that asset that will allow us to blend together all of the different ways that our hero character can move. And that asset is called a blend space. And here's how we make one. Just go into your content browser, right click, go under animation, and choose a blend space. Do not choose blend space 1D. That is not what you want. You want a blend space. So click on that. Now, you have to associate a skeleton with this asset. This is where you define compatibility for the animations in this object. So choose the UE4 mannequin skeleton, like so. Perfect. And then we need to set our name. So let's call this the hero blend. I'll hit Control S, and we'll double click to open it up. Now here we are back inside Persona, and now we're looking at this blend space. So it's got its own special little panel. And what you see is a two-dimensional grid. It's got an X and a Y axis. And at the grid points of this grid, we're going to put references to different animations. And as the values in the grid change, we're going to blend between those different animations. Now, if that sounds confusing, do not be alarmed. We're going to make it make sense. So let's start off by setting up our axes, which should always be the first thing that you do. So we'll start with the x-axis, and we're going to name this direction. And we're going to give this an axis range of negative 180 degrees to positive 180 degrees. Now, that's an interesting way to look at rotation, right? Because negative 180 and positive 180 are the same direction. They're technically right behind you if you were thinking about, like, I guess, compass points, that sort of thing. So if you rotate negative 180 degrees to your left, then you're looking right behind you. Positive, you're looking right behind you. But the important thing is that 0, the center of the X line, would be forward, right? That would be a direction of 0, which is dead ahead. Next, we're going to take the Y-axis label, and we're going to set that to speed. And we'll take the range and set it from 0 to 375, which sounds like a magic number. It kind of is, but this is the speed in centimeters per second that the character needs to be moving before he blends all the way to a run animation. Now make sure, please make sure, this is super important, that you click the Apply Parameter Changes button after you change these values. If you don't do that, then your changes to the axis parameters are not committed. So make sure you check Apply Parameter Changes. Click that. Click it a couple times. Doesn't hurt anything. Okay, once you've got your axes all set up with speed and direction, now we can start drag and dropping in our animations. So we're going to start with idle rifle hip and just drag that right to the bottom of the graph, right in the center. And nothing's going to happen yet. That's expected. Next, take jog forward rifle and drag that to the center of the grid right at the very top. Still nothing happens. You have to have 3 points on this grid before it can start triangulating a result for you. Next, let's take jog left rifle, and we'll drag that one grid space over, so that'll be at 90 degrees, because you think about the grid spaces, you have 0, and then 90, and then 180. And you can already see we're getting some blending. Now, it's not going to be super apparent how this works yet, so let's fill in the rest of our grid. We're going to take jog right rifle and drag that one grid space to the right. Then jog backward rifle. We're going to put 2 copies of this in. We're going to put it at both of the corners. And if you think about what the numbers are doing, that actually makes sense, because that means that direction would be at 180 or negative 180. And as we mentioned, that's always going to be the same direction that's behind you. So now we can start testing this, right? So wherever you move your mouse here inside the sample area, that is how you test your blend. So if I drag the mouse selection down to the middle bottom, that means that speed is at 0 and direction is at 0, and notice we're standing here at idle. As we go straight up, speed is starting to increase in our sample area, and we blend over into a run. And so now, at speed of 375, we are running. So now if I slide to the left, direction is starting to change. And so here, I can't let the mouse go outside the sample area. So his feet rotate until he's now running to his left. Or if I go the other direction, his feet rotate and now he's running right. And we can rotate him so he's running backwards. Now I will give you kind of a heads up. This is not perfect. That's because the way his feet move, so when he's running forward, you see how his feet are moving, because that's pretty much how you'd run. When he's running to the left, see how he's actually running backwards right now? So he's turned his hips to his right and he's running backwards. When he goes to the right, he's just turning his hips to the right and running forward. The problem with that is as you blend in some diagonals, your feet are actually fighting each other. So in this case, he's running forward and running right. And because to run right, he just turns his hips to the right and runs forward, this blends pretty well. But remember, when he's running left, what he does is he turns his hips to the right and runs backwards. So when you try to blend that with running forward, your feet are trying to run forward and backward at the same time. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's good enough for a prototype. And all of these animations are actually included in the animation starter pack. So you can grab them for free, and it's enough to get the point across. If I were doing this, my strafes might be a little bit different, right? I might keep my hips forward and actually shuffle my feet. And then that way, the animation should blend together pretty well. Now we do have a problem. If our direction, if our speed is at 0 and we change direction, we're gonna start doing some really weird like shuffling of the feet here. So to lock this in, you're gonna take a copy of idle rifle hip and put it in the lower corners as well. And what this means is no matter what your speed, no matter what your direction is, if your speed is 0, you're at idle. So pretty good, that's it. We've now built a blend space which allows us to blend between all of these animations. So let's go ahead and save that and we'll close. So we've got the animation asset we need to animate the hero. Now we need to start building up his animation blueprint, but we're gonna do that in the next video. So that'll wrap things up for this video. Thanks for joining us.